Hello, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Well, here we are. It's Thanksgiving 2017, and we have a lot to be thankful for here in the United States of America, but really around the world as well. And here in the United States, we do celebrate an event that occurred many years ago, back in 1621. For it was a year before that the settlers coming from England were persecuted, and that's why they left England. They went to Holland first, and then came over, and essentially had landed upon a barren landscape. There was no infrastructure there. There had been some settlers there the year before that had actually spread some sort of plague that had killed out a lot of the natives in the area. But thankfully, a native named Squanto came and greeted the settlers, the pilgrims, and they were part of this colony that had arrived here that was being funded by, I guess, the Virginia Company at the time. And they made their way here and taught the pilgrims how to grow food. They got along pretty well. But there was something that happened on the way over. It was this Mayflower Compact that was signed, and by all the members there in the company, and essentially it brought forth quite an interesting experimentation in communism. And what would end up being was this idea that everybody would work, in which all capital and profits would remain in ye common stock. So that the adventurers and planters do agree that every person that goeth, being aged 16 years or upward, be accounted a single share. The persons transported in ye adventurers shall continue their joint stock and partnership together, ye space of 7 years, during which time all profits and benefits that are got by trade, traffic, working, fishing, or other means, by any other person or persons, remain ye in common stock. Such all persons as are in this colony are to have their meat, drink, and apparel, and all provision out of ye common stock and goods, that ye end of ye 7 years, ye capital and profits, viz. The houses, lands, and goods, and chattels, be equally divided betwixt ye adventurers and planters. And but there was a problem, that arose pretty quickly after this, and that basically that it didn't work out, regardless of how hard each individual worked. It did not work. The failure of the experiment of communal service, which was tried for several years, and by good and honest men, proves to the emptiness of the theory of Plato and other ancients, applauded by some of later times, that the taking away of private property and the possession of it in a community by a commonwealth would make a state happy and flourishing, as it were, wiser than God. For in the instance, community of property was found to breed much confusion and discontent, Bradford wrote, and retard much employment, which would have been to the general benefit, for the young men who were most able and fit for service objected to being forced to spend their time and strength in working for other men's wives and children without any recompense. William Bradford continued, the strong men, or the resourceful men, had no more share of food or clothes, etc., than the weak man, who was not able or willing to do a quarter of the other could. This was thought injustice. There were aged and graver men who were ranked and equalized in labor, food, clothes, etc., with the humbler and younger ones, thought it some indignity and disrespect to them. As for the men's wives, were obligated to do service for other men, such as cooking, washing their clothes, etc. They considered it a kind of slavery, and many husbands would not brook it. Bradford explained that the communistic plan of redistributing wealth failed. If all were to share alike, and all were to do alike, then all were on equally throughout, and one was as good as another, and so, if it did not actually abolish those very relations which God himself was set up among men, it did at least greatly diminish the mutual respect that it is so important should be preserved among them. Let none argue that this is due to human failing rather than to this communistic plan or life itself. And so he described individual capitalism. He says the answer saying that all men have this failing in them, that God in his wisdom saw that another plan of life was fitter for them. So they began to consider how to raise more corn and obtain a better crop than they had done, so that they might not continue to endure the misery of want. At length, after much debate, the governor and the advice of the chief among them allowed each man to plant corn for his own household. So every family was assigned a parcel of land according to their proportion and their number. This was very successful. It made all hands very industrious, so that much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been by means the governor or any other could devise, and saved him a great deal of trouble, and gave far better satisfaction. The women now went willing into the field to look, and took their little ones with them to plant corn, while before they would allege weakness and inability, and to have compelled them would have been thought the great tyranny and oppression. Very, very interesting indeed how that all worked out, and how that discovery of what some could be considered Christian capitalism, and has had very good success, and it made all hands industrious, so as the more corn was planted than otherwise would have been. And it also meant that not only was it the food, but also their structures and their overall productivity. It just flourished, and they did very well. And so they had, and this excess product caused them to create what we now know as Thanksgiving. Not necessarily to thank the Indians for saving them, but to thank God for giving them a better way. But they did show much appreciation to the Indians out of their bounty and their willingness to share and to teach them how to plant the corn and to survive, essentially. They instituted the Thanksgiving celebration, and they invited the Indians to join them out of their bounty because they had produced so much food that they allowed the Indians, and probably the Indians learned from them as well, learned from their mistakes, and so I think everybody benefited from here. And it just goes to show you the real meaning of Thanksgiving is about giving thanks to God, and how it all worked out, and how really capitalism is what made Thanksgiving great. And what better way to have it instituted than through that learning experience, indeed. And but nonetheless, there it is. We have capitalism ruled the day for the Pilgrims, and a lot of great stuff there. So I want to wish you all, I hope you enjoyed this story, and I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving Day, and extend the multitude of gratitude you all for watching.